The Utah Utes had one of their wildest wins in recent memory. But even though Utah still found a way to get a win, their college football playoff chances fell off a cliff, and they're now hanging by the thinnest of margins.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Huge shout out to our everydayers. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. My name is JT Wistrcill, excited to be joined by the president of Playoff Optimism, Moose Bingham. We're going to talk about the playoffs in a moment with the former Utah kicker, Moose Bingham, as well as recruiting extraordinaire. Also talk about if this was Kyle Whittingham's last game, and just talk about the wild win that was for Utah too. And we'll talk about some of that right here, Moose, because although it wasn't the prettiest game and prettiest win for Utah, a win is a win. Unfortunately, though, as it relates to Utah's playoff chances, nothing really went their way. Missouri laid an egg, so Oklahoma got a win. Bama played a joke of a team, so they were able to easily get a win. BYU continues to find ways to win, so they beat Cincinnati. And because BYU beat Cincinnati, BYU has to lose this weekend. There's a bunch of crazy scenarios we could talk about in a second, but with BYU beating Cincinnati, it's really hard for Utah to get into the Big 12 title game. It's going to be really hard for Utah to get into the college football playoff with all the teams in front of them, how they won. Moose, I don't really see a realistic path for Utah and the college football playoff right now. You're the president of Player Optimism. Tell me I'm wrong.
Oh, I actually absolutely do see them getting to the playoffs.
How?
This is what's crazy. So Utah's been known to have a great defense. We took a step back yesterday. That's okay.
A step?
We're
You want to try like
hey,
a massive leap, like falling down a flight of stairs? Yeah, sure.
a slight step. Everybody has those days. Everybody makes mistakes. I've learned that from Hannah Montana myself. But listen here. The thing is, the Big 12, I believe, will have two teams in the playoffs. This is a Power Four conference, and the committee's getting a lot of pressure to put two teams in there. With that, it all depends on what happens. If West Virginia can somehow win this week, and I'm a huge Mountaineers fan, but I don't think that happens. I think Utah will end up being in a top 10 spot when everything's said and done going into the championship week. I think a couple teams ahead of them will lose, and Utah will be 10, BYU will be 9, and Texas Tech will be around 5-4-ish when everything's said and done. JT's doing the math in his head, but the math is mathing, I promise.
Did you just get 3 Big 12 teams in?
So I've got 3 Big 12 teams going into the championship weeks where it's like, okay, there's going to be a Big 12 championship, and Texas Tech, if they can handle business, BYU may drop, and that will vault Utah into where they need to be. Because we've seen the playoff committee say, hey, you know what? Like, if you make it, we're not going to punish you. I can see them punishing BYU depending on how that game goes and what happens with it. Because BYU barely beat Utah. And I could see Utah sneaking into the playoffs, especially with Kyle Whittingham's swan song season going on.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way. And look, for those of you listening, I hate being the Debbie Downer. I want to talk about yesterday's win, but the truth is we are all focused on all steam ahead. How does this Utah team make the college football playoff? And I know that's what a lot of you are also asking. And unfortunately, I wish I was feeling like Moose is, but I don't know how Utah moves up against some of these. Do you think Oklahoma basically has to lose to LSU, and I feel like Bama has to lose to Auburn? Both those teams have fired their coaches and are not playing very good. Auburn was down to Mercer. They were down to Mercer. They won, but they were down to Mercer early in that game. How do those teams lose? I don't see the LSU team's terrible. I don't see Oklahoma and Bama losing. So how does Utah get ahead of them?
Do you remember in 2022 what happened going into the Pac-12 championship? Utah needed 15 things to hit. And if you had that in Vegas, you are killing it. Mm-hmm. I feel like this is a very similar situation, and it's going to take 2 or 3 weeks for it to play out. But I think Utah could end up in the right situation to end up in the playoffs. No one wants to see 6 SEC teams.
The committee
and
does. The committee does.
They don't trust
You
me.
don't think so?
And who is on the committee?
Who?
Who's the last person
Mr.
added?
Mark Harlan. But they make him move.
Yes,
Leave
it
their.
was.
They make him leave
That's
the
what I'm
room.
talking about. We're getting the subliminal messages. He's going to have Utah gear from head to toe. He's going to be looking like Santa Claus in there. And he's like, hey, you know what? We've got a squad that could beat any of y'all. And I think Utah is putting up enough points. Utah has never been known to put up points, but with the arrival of Jason Beck, they can win games in different ways. And Nick Saban found out he had to do this too. It used to be you win a game 12-9, and those are my favorite games with 4 field goals to 3. Now it's you're winning 50-47, and it's a fantastic adventure. And what matters is you have the grit to win, even when you've got a 2% chance of it happening.
Yeah, you're saying there's a chance. That's all that matters. A recap of what happened this week for the teams ranked ahead of Utah. Top 3 took care of business. Georgia won, Georgia played no one, I think, or no, Charlotte, they beat the crap out of them. Tech won big over UCF. Ole Miss won. Oregon got a big one. Oregon knocked USC out from leaping us, but Oregon pretty much cemented themselves in, even with a loss to Washington. I don't even know if they'd fall below Utah. That would be something that'd be interesting to see how that would shake out. Oklahoma won. We mentioned that. Notre Dame just throttled a Syracuse. Like, they're not going to fall. Bama played no one. They got to win, and BYU got to win too. So then that's where Utah sits at 12. There's also a problem though, Moose. I think Utah is very much in trouble of being leaped by the 2 teams behind them. I don't think that's what should happen. But this committee, Vandy was on a bye, and they moved Miami over Vandy, literally for being on a bye. Miami but they beat Virginia Tech. Vandy absolutely throttled, Kentucky. And Utah allowed 47 points to a bad or at best mid Kansas State team. With how this committee has moved and consistently valued the big brands, I'm genuinely concerned that Utah is going to drop in this week's rankings.
Well, here's the thing. Kansas State their back was to the wall. They have 5 wins. They're trying to get to that magical number 6. And at the end of the day, it's hard to beat a team with nothing to lose. And Utah faced a team with nothing to lose. They're like, we have to win. And I feel like Utah, they're going in kind of in the glory of, we're sending Witt out on top. It's senior day. There's a lot of things going on. And they were having a jolly good time. But unfortunately, Kansas State was ready to play. The second half, though, what happened with that? Utah came out and they're like, we're done playing with our food. Let's get down to business.
I feel like Utah just made clutch stops on defense. Like, that was in Kansas State. I can't believe still, like, after Utah scored the touchdown, long pass to Larry Simmons, for Kansas State, it must have been a miscommunication. For Kansas State to drop back, like have Avery Johnson looked like he was going to throw the ball on first down, and then that broken play ended up running. It looked like that was crazy to me. Kansas State, in some ways, did help Utah get back in that game, but Utah won the game. That's all that matters. And we're going to talk at the end, like, Big 12 title scenarios, how can Utah get in there? But first, something pretty big happened yesterday. It felt like there might be a changing of the guard based on how Kyle Whittingham was acting yesterday. Are we overlooking it, or was that genuinely Kyle Whittingham's last game at Rice-Eccles Stadium? We're going to talk about it in one moment. But first, this episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Wayfair. The holiday season is right around the corner, and it means it's time to get your home ready. Whether you need more seating for guests, cozy new lines, or fun serveware for holiday hosting, Wayfair's Black Friday sale is here to help you make your space shine. And the best part, you don't have to wait. Wayfair's Black Friday deals are happening all month long with up to 70% off everything from sofas to spatulas. I recently upgraded my dining room and rug as well, and Wayfair completely transformed the room. If you've ever hosted your family for the holidays, you know how much a difference a few nice touch-ups can make. Wayfair makes it that much easier. Don't miss out on early Black Friday deals. Head to wayfair.com now to shop Wayfair's Black Friday sale. Up to 70% off your order too. That's wayfair.com, wayfair.com. Sale ends December 7th. Head to Wayfair right now for those Black Friday sale up to 70% off. You can check out Wayfair today. Yesterday's game was obviously epic, legendary. The comeback was something that won't be forgotten. I think it's Utah's the win that Utah had that will stick with me the longest, or that is the most memorable at home since the Cam Rising USC ran in the 2-point conversion. Like, it just felt like a moment for Utah. Devon Dampier breaking off that 4th-and-1 big run, powering it in on 3rd-and-1. Like, it just felt like it was something memorable. But there's also a couple things that happened too. Number one, Kyle Whittingham got emotional in the press conference, talking about the senior class, how much he loves them. It's also a moment where him and Morgan Scalley shook hands. And Moose, it just something yesterday that felt final about it. It felt like this was Kyle Whittingham's last ever home game. How did you feel watching? Because I genuinely do feel like that was his last game. I was starting to feel that going into it. And then based on how everything played out, I feel like that was it for him, at least at home as the coach of the Utah Utes.
Yeah, I could see it, but I don't count my chickens before they hatch, to be honest with you. I can look at writing on the wall and say, hey, that's cool, but it might be the wrong language sometimes. And with Kyle, this is a very emotional senior class for him. You look at the linemen that came back that had the
Yeah.
opportunity to go other places. You look at the transfer
Well,
portal era.
you talk about like those guys returning instead of going pro, right?
Yes,
My
exactly.
apologies. You read like transferring to other schools. I got you. My bad. Yeah, you keep going.
Well, there's a plethora of different things that they could have done.
Mhm.
Everyone, this is a class that's super loyal to the University of Utah in an era where you don't have loyalty. When you do have Lander Barton coming back, when you do have a Smith Snowden, when you do have the Faunos, when you do have a John Henry Daly, like there's so many guys where you're just like, this is a phenomenal class. And I don't know if you're going to see very many like that again, to be honest with you. Because it used to be if you could get 50% of your class to senior day, it was an amazing class. Nowadays, if you can get 5 guys at the end of the day that you signed as high school freshmen, you're knocking it out of the park. And I think that Whittingham is finally in an era where he's got a great offense, he's got a phenomenal defense, he has everything going for him. And if this was his last game, he coached his tail off. And whatever he said in the locker room, probably inspired these boys to send him off on a win, just like other legendary coaches in the state, like Lavelle Edwards, where he had a win to end his career at home as well.
It's like I said, it felt fine with me yesterday. I also, Moose, you talk about how loyal this class was. Utah loses a lot. The odds of Utah being better next year than they were this year is tough. I don't know how you were, yeah, zero. Yeah, you say zero. Like, how do you replace all 5 offensive linemen and improve? Like, sure, defensive tackles should get better next year. Hopefully a healthy Dampier, so maybe he's a little better, but I don't know, man. Like, I just feel like this is as high as it's going to get, at least for the next year. Like, then at that point, probably talk about 27. If you want to be even better, maybe like when you hand it off to Bird. And that's not to say like Bird will be better than Devon. It's just like, I think Utah is probably 2 years away from being a top 4, like a top 3 Big 12 team. It's a tall road to climb like next year. How much do you think that weighs on Whittingham? Because next year could be I just don't think they'll be as good as they were next year, right?
No, I am very optimistic about Utah, but the losses are massive.
Massive.
You're losing 2 first rounders on the line. You're losing if John Henry Daly decides to bounce, that is a massive loss. If Smith Snowden goes, if you lose your safeties, like there's a lot of guys that are contributing that are either seniors or NFL draft ready. And so I think that Utah's going to be going into a rebuild. And I don't know if Witt wants to do a rebuild at this point in his career.
Yeah, I agree. I
Like,
don't think he does either. Yeah. I think I don't
yeah.
know if it'll be a full rebuild next year. Like, I still think they'll be I think they'll still be one of the 4, like top 6 teams in the Big 12, but like we'll see if they're top 3. They have a lot to replace and retool, and we'll see if they get there. Were you going to add something, Moose?
Yeah. Well, the other thing you got to take into account is these coaches are hot names right now. Utah's offensive line coach is a very hot name, not just in college circles, but NFL circles.
Yeah.
Jason Beck, what he's done at Utah this year, the improvement that's happened, you don't think SEC teams are going to be knocking down his door
Ugh.
with what he's done the last couple years? And Big Ten teams? Like, if Oregon loses their OC, you think Jason Beck isn't going to get a call to go up to be with Dan Lanning? Like, let's be honest here. There's a lot of things that I love about this program, and nationally, it should be loved because they're a top 12 team And they're doing it without a number one receiver or really a number two or three. We're having receivers pop up that were basically scout team guys
Yeah.
catching like
Creed Whittemore.
game winning.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, who is this dude? And they're like, with 8 catches on the season. And you're like, well, make it 9. But the scheme that's been done on offense and defense this season, it's probably one of the best coaching jobs I've seen. And the nation is taking notice. And with success, you're going to lose assistants.
That's scary. Yeah, you think it'll be hard for Utah to retain this staff for next year? All the guys back?
It depends on what the boosters want to do. It
Yeah.
depends on how invested is this fan base in this program. And if they are invested, can we get the right chess pieces for these coaches to play with?
Yeah, and that'll be really interesting to see. You're starting to scare me with some of this future talk. So let's go back to the present, Moose.
Okay.
Yesterday was so incredible. I mean, I still can't believe this team found a way to win. Credit Devon Dampier for stepping up late and making plays. The Utah offense was pretty much always there, but even the defense with a couple of big stops after, I was just so impressed with the resolve and the grit and the fight for this team to send their seniors out the right way. What will you remember most about yesterday's incredible and in some ways legendary comeback?
Well, honestly, it was just coming out of halftime that I was most impressed with. Getting stops, getting 14 points basically off the bat and making this a game. And the wherewithal to even come back when you have like a John Henry Daly going down. And that is where a lot of your pressure comes from and where a lot of this team gets their wins. That was really impressive for guys to hunker down, understand their assignments, and then get it done at the level they needed to pull out a win.
And then Utah did. They pulled out a win somehow, despite the worst defensive rushing performance, like the worst defensive stopping the run performance this team has ever put on the field, literally in program history. And he did it in 3 quarters too. Kansas State did. When the question is like, what went wrong with Utah? I mean, they simply got their butt whooped on several occasions. I thought schematically there could have been some adjustments to try and slow things down, Moose. But what did you see? Like, why did Utah have their literally the worst rushing defense performance in the program's history?
Well, here's the thing. You look at what happened in the offseason. We lost a D tackle to BYU. We lost a D tackle to Washington. We've had injuries. I know Whittingham doesn't put injuries down ever, but you go through 10 weeks, you're banged up. And especially when it comes to D line, where it's not like you're at corner where you're like, okay, I'm going to run a 9 or whatever. And like, patty cake, baker's man. You're sitting there and it's like, I am taking someone on every single down.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that the wear and tear with guys that we initially thought would be second or third string going into the season have finally caught up, and guys that weren't quite ready to contribute. And with John Henry Daly going down, that guard that had to be aware of what's going on in the edge, finally he's like, oh, I can just tee off on this 3 tech or this 0 tech and get some things done. And then we've seen the linebacker room has been a little bit thin as well. And so you're seeing a lot of just injuries piling up, even though they're not listed. You're seeing bumps and bruises really starting to take action in these games.
How is Samote Peppa doing at Washington? I just looked it up. He has 4 tackles on the year, but D tackle always a deceptive stat for that. Have you heard much about him?
No, I haven't watched a ton of Washington games, but I know last year defensive tackles were at a premium. So
Yes, they were.
if you're sitting there, you're like, hey, I'm a defensive tackle. I could be a late round draft pick. Why don't I get my payday right now? It makes sense, you know.
Yeah, Utah missed Peppa clearly. Tafuna is another guy who went off to the NFL, and another one that just hurts to lose. But unfortunately, Utah, their run defense took a hit, but still found a way to win. That's what matters. So technically, they are still alive for the Big 12 title game. How did they get there? It's quite the journey. We'll take you through it in one moment. This episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands. It's really just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is genuinely what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25. The app makes makes it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. I love the zone deals too. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. This is the fastest, cheapest, and easiest way that avoids stress than any other ticketing app I've ever used. So genuinely, take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. All caps, no spaces for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go download Game Time today. Moose, this Utah team is not done in the Big 12 title race, but a lot needs to happen. Joe Coles of the Deseret News said, here's Utah's path to a Big 12 title game. BYU would have to, would require BYU to beat UCF. That'll happen. Utah to beat Kansas, Arizona State to beat Arizona, and West Virginia to beat Tech. Somehow Tech would be
Mountaineers.
Shout out Mountaineer Paul. Somehow, some way. Texas Tech would be eliminated from the 3-team tiebreaker due to record against common conference opponents, with equal times with West Virginia in there. Then Arizona State and Utah would be in a tiebreaker, which Utah would win due to the head-to-head victory. This would result in a Utah BYU Big 12 championship with a playoff berth on the line. Moose, I don't see how in the world the West Virginia Mountaineers can beat the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Like I don't see how Utah, they got to do all they can against Kansas. They win there, but I don't know, man. Like I said, I just don't see a path for Utah to get into the college football playoff.
Yeah, it's tough. It's still there. You're saying there's a chance, but I'm still pretty optimistic that they can get into the college football playoff and not be in the Big 12 championship. I think there's some crazy things that can happen.
There can. I just don't feel like they're likely. Like, who's going to win next week? Like Oklahoma or LSU? When Oklahoma plays LSU, I mean, Oklahoma should win, right?
I'm a big LSU guy this week.
We gotta be. I mean, we gotta be. Same thing with Auburn. And it's possible. Like, if you're saying which of the two losses is actually more likely, actually probably say Alabama. I mean, Auburn is, you know, they look great against Mercer. Like, it's a rivalry game, and crazy things always happen in rivalry games. So I'm willing to give them a chance. But like, I just look at this West Virginia Tech game, Moose, and like for trying to get Utah back to the Big 12 title game there, I just don't see how Tech would let this opportunity slip through their fingertips. Like, they have a chance. If they lose this game, I don't like, and then if they have to win the Big 12 title, well, actually, some of these things happen. They would be out of the Big 12 title game. They won't make, if they somehow lose to West Virginia, they won't go to the college football playoff. Like, if your second loss comes to a bad Mountaineer team and your other loss already isn't great. I like Arizona State. They're somehow a top 25 team. Shout out Jeff Sims. But I just don't see how. Like I said, man, I don't see how Utah gets to Arlington. I can't believe that BYU found a way to win again. Shout out the Cougars. It's just another crazy, chaotic week in the Big 12, right?
Well, BYU won, and that's cool. But hey, how about Utah State getting bowl eligible? All three Utah teams won. That's what I'm focusing on. The state of Utah is fantastic. And Weber State won. And
Weber
SUU won.
Weber State, a big win over Northern Arizona. Kept them out of the playoff.
Oh, yeah. Let's freaking go. So the state of Utah is healthy when it comes to football this week.
They are. Unfortunately, though, actually, why not? Let's talk about this. I don't know if BYU is going to make it to the college football playoff. Some people will be like, how is that even possible? Because they're going to beat UCF, and I don't see how in the world you leave even if they lose in the title game to Tech, I don't see how they're left out. Moose, if BYU gets blown out again, I think that's the most likely outcome with how good this Tech team is and what's on the line. I don't see how BYU would get into the college football playoff if I think they should be in. Like, let me say that. I think BYU should be in. If you are a one-loss regular season team, you automatically deserve to go in. If they get blown out against the best team they play twice, I don't know if the committee is going to put them in, considering they're already on the outside looking in to an Alabama who, if Bama wins, won't have another award on their resume and would probably remain above them, right? Like, I don't see the path right now. There's a path. I don't think the Big 12 is getting two in. How do you see it?
I actually do think the Big 12 is getting two in, because if you don't put two Big 12 teams in, you're saying that there's no longer P4 conferences. You're saying that there's P2 conferences. And so you've got the Power 2 conferences, you've got the SEC, and you've got the Big 10, and then you have everyone else. If you don't allow this Big 12 conference, who's proven that they can compete, they've done everything they can. I'm not saying let two like ACC teams in, because you could have an ACC champion that's 8-4, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's crazy about that conference. But I would be flabbergasted with the petitioning going on if you don't have two Big 12 teams. But if BYU gets absolutely blown out in the Big 12 title game, it would be tough to put them in. And if that happens, I say bring BYU and Utah to Orlando. Let's get some Pop Tarts and
Oh,
have some good
yes.
times.
Oh, that'd be my dream. Unfortunately, I don't think they'd let us play them in the Pop-Tart Bowl. I think it's in that us versus an ACC school, Big 12 ACC. I think BYU probably would go there. Utah will probably be Vegas or like Holiday Bowl bound at that point, but I would love it. It's just crazy though, Moose, that if you're Utah, like you lost 2 games, and that's the tough part about this playoff. And I'm good with it at 12. And I'm also like, hey, Utah, at the end of the day, like you have to beat the best teams you play. But it's unfortunate that you do win 10 games, and it does feel like there's not a high likelihood for you to crack the playoff field. That does kind of suck as a Utah fan, right?
But I'm actually happy that Utah, like, at least we're not in the freaking Mountain West, where it's like we've been
Yeah,
undefeated for
going back to
3 years
that.
and we're still out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like, what Whittingham has done to build this program to be at a 10-win click is incredible. The gumption that he's taken, the risks he's taken this last year to make sure that he's going out on top is phenomenal. He definitely zigged when he usually zags. And he's done a great job getting an offensive staff in that he's not used to and being hands off with them,
Yeah.
not being like, let's run the ball every single down, even though they do. They're smart about it. I have been so impressed with Whittingham that I think this just etches him as one of the top 4 coaches to come out of the state of Utah. And he's on my Mount Rushmore in the state of Utah and possibly the nation.
I like it. Who would your Mount Rushmore be for that in the state first?
In the state, you got to go with Coach Mack. You got to go with Lavelle Edwards. I'm putting Kyle right there. And then, oh, it's too early for Kalani.
Yeah.
I do really love Bronco, but I might throw Eric Kerr on there just for the
Oh,
heck
wow.
of it.
Oh my gosh. He's working wonders right now. Shout out to him, state champions, and now he's going to be playing the national championship game. The high school coach at Quarter Canyon. It's remarkable what he's done. I like that Urban's not on there, and I like Urban did a good job at Utah, but it was a cup of tea here, like in the
It's
grand
2
scheme of things, right?
years.
Yeah.
It's not enough to
No.
really be like, hey, you were here and you did it. I
Mhm.
mean, to be a legendary coach in the state of Utah, I think it's a 10-year deal. I really probably would put Bronco in there right now, and Kyle and
Yeah.
Kalani would have an opportunity to hop on that Mount Rushmore eventually. And I really think Morgan Scally would as well. We may just have to carve out a few more places in there and go from 4 to 6.
Well, thankfully Morgan will get a shot soon. You mentioned Kalani. This is a more Big 12 big picture conversation. I would give him Big 12 Coach of the Year. Would you? I think he's done a better coaching job than McGuire. It's no slight to McGuire. McGuire's probably going to win the award, but I view it as like the kind of how the NFL Coach of the Year goes. They don't always give it to the coach with the best record. They give it to the coach who's done the best job. I believe that's Sataki. What do you think?
I mean, with Sataki's roster, I've been really impressed. McGuire, they just went out and got the best talent.
Yeah, they did.
And kudos to them. I mean,
Credit
great
to them.
job.
Hmm?
I would give really the general manager at Texas Tech the
Agreed.
general manager of the year.
Yeah.
But I would agree with you with Kalani. And I would be okay with Whittingham getting it as well.
Ooh.
I mean, I have no problem with Whittingham getting coach of the year because of what he's done, because of how he won the last game, because of how he kept his team together. And I've been really impressed with Whittingham's job, per usual.
Yeah, I think it sucks you lost to your 2 head-to-head games. That's where it'll be hard for Kyle to get it, but I agree. Like, he deserves votes. He's right in the thick of it. And yes, I know Sataki, like I said, same argument head-to-head. He lost to Tech, but the totality of the season, what he was able to do, navigating the quarterback position like they did, I'm impressed. And McGuire will win it, and he's very deserving. I'm just saying who my vote would go to. And see, I gave BYU some love, so I can't always hate BYU like some people say, right? Oh, well, that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Utes. Moose, thank you so much for coming on, man. Please let everyone know about all the things you got going on.
Oh, the biggest thing is I've got my all-state list coming out tomorrow on the Utah Preps podcast.
Woo.
That should be really, really fun. And you may see some guys like Lee Benjamin or PJ Taki or some other guys that Utah are interested in. The Pula twins, of course. So should be fun. Can't wait for you guys to tune into that
Moose, thanks for hopping on.
anytime.
That's going to do it for today's Locked On News. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about Kyle Whittingham's press conference and getting you ready for the Utah Utes taking on the Kansas Jayhawks and already the last game of the regular season on tomorrow's show.